Although they need absolutely no introduction, it gives me immense pleasure to introduce our two guests this morning. Two brilliantly creative minds in different professional fields whose interests converge in their instinctive understanding and appreciation of beautiful things. What makes today's conversation even more special is that over the years, Pinakin has designed 3 different spaces for Viren and his family, both residential and his office space. Pinakin Patel, who has a group of artworks included in our upcoming sale that you can see as you walk around the room, has had an unconventional career path, to say the least, having the courage from a young age to choose passion over expectations. Today, he is best known for his signature architectural and interior design projects, his lifestyle products, but most importantly, the ability to breathe life and beauty into any space. We look forward to hearing more about this journey, which quite naturally has crossed paths with artworks at multiple times. Viren Bhagat has been designing jewelry from the age of 24. Viren's genius lies both in his hand and his eye. I have never seen anyone create designs as gracefully and as meticulously as he does, freehand, perfect in their proportion, their shape, and their angle. For anyone who hasn't visited his store, if you'd like to go not to see the jewelry, just to see the pencils that he draws with on his table, I promise you it's a treat. His ability to reincarnate beautiful things inspired by Mughal architecture, Art Deco designs, or even Rothko paintings into precious jewels personifies the term perfection. For both these gentlemen, beauty is a way of life, innate and all-encompassing, which has led them to being great friends with a mutual admiration and respect for each other. Let's see what they have to say.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Malika, for the very flattering introduction. So I'm going to say a little bit about my friendship with Pinakin, which spans for more than 30 years now. And I've seen Pinakin through his many avatars. I think the first time I met him, he was in his sadhu avatar, where he used to wear his lungi and his kurta, very, very minimal, and had shed everything from life. So I've seen him from that, change into this pop star, rock star, changed many, many times. But the amazing thing about him is that through all these years that I've known him and all the different avatars that I've seen him through, one thing that has remained is his purity. His purity of spirit, his thought, his deed, and most importantly, his aesthetic. That hasn't changed at all, hasn't wavered at all. And I've been a huge admirer of his work, and I treasure him as a dear friend. He's designed 3 of my spaces. One of them, which is my favorite space, is where I work, in a basement, in a tiny basement, which he complains that I don't even step out of. But that's clearly what he does. He's a master of space. I don't think I know anybody who can visualize space better than Pinakin. And that itself is a talent which you cannot teach. He's not a trained architect, as everybody knows, but I think he's better than most architects I know. So he's a genius, and I've been seeing these works that you see now on the walls here, I've been seeing them in his home for the last 30 years, and how the collection gradually developed. The best part was that these works were not even in the front of the house. They were in a passage at the back, in the private part of his house, where only he and Dolly could enjoy them, because that's where they would walk from their bedroom to the dining room, literally. So that is Pinakin for you. So I don't think he really fits into the, one cannot call him a true collector as such, because I don't think he ever collected. I think he just acquired these paintings for the joy that they brought him, but not with any other thought in mind, no commercial aspect at all. And I think that's what makes his collection very special, because he has collected them with his exceptional eye, and they're masterworks. In every artist that he has here, they're absolute masterworks. And I think I'm going to now request him to take us out through this journey of how he started acquiring these works and what is so special about them. So Pinakin, over to you.
Thank you, Malika, and thank you, Viren.
Where should I start? They've already introduced me in such flattering terms to the audience. I don't know. You're very kind, Viren. And I would like to reciprocate, take 1 minute of your time just to reciprocate my friendship with Viren. It's a little mutual admiration society between the two of us. When we sit across each other, the rest of the world stops to exist. And we get lost in each other's sense of beauty and evolution. I have seen him stick to his purity of work with the same passion that I was trying to stick. We are both products of the same era where art and design were just raising their heads in this country, and perhaps we are the first generation of Indian designers who have come of some age in their own lifetime with the rest of the growth of their own country. So that period that we've shared between the two of us is even dear to both of us. And yeah, so to answer your question, Viren, where did I start? Gosh, it's a long life. I'm 70 years old. And I started perhaps when I was 15. So it's a very long journey. You know, it's so strange, but I don't remember art as anything else other than growing up, because I was growing up, art was growing up, the country was growing up, and all the growth was so simultaneous, so organic and so natural that I don't know if I registered any one of these things uniquely, separately. I mean, you know, every day wove its own story into life. Because Bombay's very, very first art gallery, I don't know how many there are now, but Bombay had two art galleries, Kemold and Pandol. Delhi had one, Dhumimal's, and these three were the only art galleries in India. There wasn't anything else, and I'm not talking of many centuries ago. I'm just talking about, let's say, 1963 or 62. And there were only three galleries and hardly any understanding of what was happening. But there was a murmur, and there were artists and there were gallerists who were trying to promote them more as family members. And in the midst of all this, one fine day, Jahangir Art Gallery opened. While we discuss art, we cannot ever forget the gratitude that we owe as Mumbaikars to the two art families of Mumbai, the Pandols and the Kemolds, Gandhis, because without them, you know, this city wouldn't have been the same. From, you know, working towards the galleries, the Parsi philanthropists worked at providing the city with its first gallery, Jahangir Art Gallery. It provided us with the first National Gallery of Modern Art in the form of Jahangir Nicholson Museum. They provided us with the first JJ School of Art and Architecture. So the Parsi contribution has been great. And when I was 15, I think Jahangir Art Gallery opened its doors and became the first place to show art on a public platform. And my mother took me to see it, and that was my first impression of seeing the art. I don't think she understood it at all herself, but she knew that I had an artistic inclination, so she kind of exposed me to the gallery. And after that, in a few years, it became like my Saturday place to go to. And most of the initial time was spent in bewilderment, because as Rabindranath Tagore used to say, that art is man's surplus emotional energy, and I guess I was bursting with extra emotional energy. And that sort of drove me into that gallery space, and I would see different artists change their shows and put up things. So many isms and so many theories and so much organization about art had not started, luckily. There were no familiar faces. There were no stalwarts. Everybody was just a beginner or a seeker. There were only two categories of people. So the beginners were trying to establish themselves through a brand new medium, through a yet to be developed economy. And the seekers were wandering around these spaces, kind of wondering what was going on and kind of inspired by the feeling of awe that it was generating. And I was amongst those people. I was very lucky to receive the tutorage of Keku and Khurshid Gandhi, who ran Kemold on the first floor of Jahangir. And I would go and talk to them about the art. And they would try to explain to me what it was about. And it was so personal that they would tell me, "Okay, come sit." And there'd be just the three of us in the gallery. And then the husband and wife very politely would go behind the curtains, pick one canvas at a time, bring it out, hold it in front of me as a private audience, and say, "So, Pinakin, what do you think of it?" Just imagine when today we are walking around galleries trying to get a glimpse of the artist or speak to the gallerist, or, there are hundreds of people jostling around, and here I was sitting in complete Zen isolation with the people who were going to write the history of contemporary art in this country, and get exposed to the art one by one. And I used to ask them the most fundamental questions about art, and a lot of them were functionally answered by them. The rest only came, Viren, as spiritual growth, because ultimately, though I have been able to go through every almost aspect of design, I even had a fling with fashion once. And design does express itself ultimately only in its materiality, right? So when you see Viren's art, it comes out as jewels, or you see my art, it will come out as furniture or buildings. But the source of that art is not material. The source is spiritual. The source comes from your spirit. It comes right from within you. And when, as an audience, when you come in front of it, and when you see it, a lot of people used to ask me that, what is that moment when you fall in love with a work of art that compels you to buy it and not walk away from it in a gallery? And what is that transaction that occurs? And I said that it's actually, when you look back at it, I thought that it was an exchange of energy. Because otherwise, it was just too abstract and too unsaid to be explained or articulated. So I said there is an exchange of energy that goes on, because when the artist is making his work of art, he is dealing with his own energy and he's putting it into that work of art. He's trying to say something, and that energy translates into the work, goes with it onto the walls of the gallery. And when I'm looking at it, it's the state I am in. And believe me, the days that I had just finished yoga or had a good, nice, light sattvic meal and gone to a gallery, I would be in a different mood than I would be if I had washed down 2 pizzas and a Coke. So this whole thing about the 3 states of being that goes with Indian culture, the Indian Vedic culture, and says that tamas, rajas and sattva, creativity, art, design flourish with sattva, and that was mostly transacted with the works each time I responded to them, each time I got them. They were not labels, they were not established artists, because like I just told you that all of us started in the same decade, so there was no seniority, there was nobody to follow as such except your own instinct. And the journey has been over 55 years, and perhaps even this time, I must share a little secret with you that I must be the only person who's auctioning his own works at an auction, and I've already reserved something, and I've told Dadiba that, I'm going to bid for this. So I was wondering how this journey will continue, and I don't think it's ever going to end. At the moment, I'm only taking a pause with it, Viren, because I think at every stage one wants to consolidate life and benchmark it so that you remember your growth, your association with it. And I feel that my 70th birthday reminds me that I should now, I have hundreds of works of art, and it's not possible to enjoy them in my own house. Most of the time they are in godowns, and I'm looking after them. And before I start developing a patronizing attitude towards them and saying that they're occupying my time and attention, because beautiful things, that's another lesson in philosophy I learned, that beauty, my whole life has been, the vehicle of life has been the search for beauty. And beauty from a Western viewpoint, if it is understood, it tends to multiplicity. Every time you get exposed to beauty, you buy a beautiful garment, you buy a beautiful jewel, you buy a beautiful building, it generates another level of interest simultaneously in you, and it tends to multiplicity. So immediately you will seek another jewel, you will seek another painting, and you will become a hobby collector, and you will become a compulsive collector before you know. And if you don't watch out, somewhere along the way, that search for beauty has turned into so much multiplicity. And at one stage I corrected myself for it, and I said that it's absolutely enjoyable, it's lovely to own so much work, but there must be some other association with it also. And that's when I read a little bit of Indian philosophy, Vedanta, and I came to the conclusion that the spiritual content is such that the moment you shift your focus from the beautiful to the sublime, to things that are ethereal, to things that take you higher in life, that whole multiplicity ceases, because the will is quenched. And you feel so gratified in whatever beauty that you then discover, that you're at peace with yourself. Then you're no longer buying in that frenzied mode of being obsessed with that magic. And
so
that answers.
No, that's wonderful. I mean, that's a great way to start your journey. And I love the way you describe how you discovered yourself along the way. I think that's fantastic. But my question to you is that, to go back to what I said, was about your journey and where you started collecting. So what I think the audience would also love to know is which was like the early works which you collected, and from there how the journey, because we have some works here, and I think there are some works which are going to come later at auction, I think. But it would be nice to just explain to them where you started, with which works, which artists appealed to you early in your life, and where you are now. So it's, of course, that's a very long journey, but so we can at least start with the beginning. Let's begin with that, and with some of the works that are here in the room, perhaps you can elaborate on some of the works that are here already.
Sure. So just by virtue of being born in the 50s, I'm a modernist, right? Because in the history of art and design, people get a little confused with the different categories of the historical evolution of design. And anything that looks kind of abstract or whimsical is called modern. But modern is the period around the 50s, mid-century. And much later, much after that, came the contemporary art movement. So I was lucky enough to be born in another generation of art, and the earliest art I started collecting, Viren, were the modernists, because they were part of my age group. They were the ones who were being sold in the galleries. So what is often referred to as the progressive group of painters also. So you have, like my favorite, Ram Kumar is hanging here, this brown one. And there's a beautiful Hussein inside. And these were some of the early works, the Bindu Raza. These were some of the early works that I started collecting, the modernists, because contemporary art had not yet raised its head. There was no such word as contemporary art. It was only modern art. So those were the artists I was buying. The galleries were Pandole and Kemold. And a lot through private shows of artists. And there was no verification process, Viren. There wasn't an art journal to refer to or art critic to discuss this with. It was only you and your instinct. And in the silence of an empty gallery with hardly any people, looking at the art, in that sort of isolated beauty, one could take these kind of judgments. As modern art turned into contemporary art, for a brief moment, I lost my connect with it because my perspective was mainly rooted in the modernist. So I understood modernist architecture, I understood brutalism, I understood all the aspects of it, and the form and scale with which the modernists worked. But the contemporaries were talking a completely different language. And it caught me on the wrong foot. And for some time I froze up, I stopped collecting, I sort of put everything in cold storage. And I didn't want to sort of just live with the old and display that, neither could I figure out the new. And it took me a little while, but it took me to an exhibition, again through the same galleries, and look at younger artists who were evolving close on the heels of the modernists, the Manjit Babas and a whole Vivan Sundaram and all of these artists who were sort of now following from the footsteps of the modernists and doing contemporary work. And they kind of rekindled my interest in art and kept it going. At the same time, the world itself was being globalized, so the speed suddenly picked up. So my transition from modern art to contemporary art took forever. But from contemporary till today, the art life has just gone by like a dream, because the world got globalized, India opened its doors. I now even have been lucky enough to have a collection of international art. I go to the Frieze Art Fair whenever I can in London. And I've kept in touch. I go to see young artist shows. But one satisfying thing out of this whole thing was also that I could not limit myself just in one role. Like Viren says, he didn't see me as a collector. So I wasn't only buying and hoarding. Somewhere along the way, I had become part of the fraternity. So I had started working for the community. I had started working in the National Gallery voluntarily. I started doing shows for them. I did a beautiful one called Street for them. And my involvement then became public from personal.
That's wonderful, Pinakin. And I also see that you have quite a few foreign artists here in the collection. You have Shemza, so what was your experience seeing? I mean, I just love the fact that you have a conversation with the work of art. It's very similar to what I feel, because when mine is a very completely different subject, but it's when I see a gemstone, it's actually a conversation that we have. Before I decide to do something, acquire it or make something with it. So because it's a very similar kind of a feeling. So having a conversation with the artwork is so important. I think more than whether you acquire it or not, that's a different matter. But I think what art has always done is to raise, questions in your mind. There's it raises many different feelings within you. And similarly, I think, we have the same, I'm just trying to compare because I feel the same thing in my business, in my work, what I do. And it's incredible the kind of energy I feel when I see gemstones. Yeah, it's a very similar thing in so many ways. So that's a very interesting concept. And so to come back to you again, you mentioned the artists that you collect, the modernists. And is there any particular work which really resonates with you, something that you want to elaborate on, something that really appealed to you or stays with you? Is there any particular work?
One work which was kind of significant in such a long journey and over hundreds of works. It's difficult to choose your favorite, but I guess what you remember is the earliest one. So my first major purchase which set a hole into my bank account, which shocked my wife and my family at home, was the Hussein that is sitting across you in this room. And I got it from Dadiba. And a lot of my collection that is displayed here in the auction is from there. That's why I'm even endorsing Pundole's as an auction house for my sale. And I was going again and again to their old showroom at gallery at Flora Fountain. Also partly to be able to buy the Eastern Pedas next door. And it used to be a wonderful feeling because, the gallery was such a personal space. His parents would come and open it up, and Kali would be, pottering around there and going up on the first floor, and some new works of art would have come. One fine day, he came with a suitcase full of Sousa drawings, and one of those drawings is up here today. And I said, what is this, And he said that, no, I had gone to see a Sikh artist, Sousa. And he doesn't have money. Most of the artists died in poverty. And they were patronized by these families. They were supported month after month. It's their income which kind of kept their fires burning. And to see these transactions going on was another connection with art itself than what one sees today. So he says that he was in hospital, and he says, how am I ever going to pay my debt to you? So, I've told them to pack up all my drawings in these suitcases and give them to you today. So go take them home. And I don't think Kali was also aware of what was happening, but before he knew, he had got caught in the sentiments, and he came back with that suitcase. And I remember, I don't know if Dadiba was there himself that day or not, because by then he had joined his father. And they opened up the suitcase, and all these gorgeous Sousa drawings spilled out of the suitcase. And in that moment, we were all lost in the joy and bewilderment of art. There was nothing to say about anything else other than saying, oh my God, how prolific. And his father very generously said that you have now become a regular buyer and you do collect a lot of art from us. So today I just want to extend my generosity to you and say that, okay, here are these. I've got them free today. Would you like to take home some? So these kind of narratives are lost now, I guess, because the world has become a much faster thing, and transactions are happening quicker and faster and this and that. But yeah, that's what it is.
So, this reminds me of my early meetings with Pinakin. And so he would come to my store and sit with me, and we'd have a wonderful conversation. And of course, I'd love to show off my work to him. So I'd bring my pieces. And he would say, no, I don't want to see the jewelry, I want to see your drawings. So I would always wonder why, because he loves my drawings. And for him, at that moment, he said something which was very interesting. He's saying, for me, when I see the drawing, already you have filled my curiosity, you've already transmitted what it's supposed to be. I don't even need to see the jewel anymore. And that for me was very special, because there are very few people who understand that. He's one of the rare people who does that. I don't show my drawings to people normally. It's not for the public. But he recognized it early, and so every time when he's with me, I always show my drawings. And then if he insists, then I show him the jewelry. So it's a very rare quality that he has. And I'm so pleased that now some of my drawings are part of his personal collection, which I've never parted in my entire life. But Pinakin is one person who has them.
It's a privilege, Viren. And that brings me to the core subject that not only binds our friendship between Viren and me, but which I want to share with you, to say that should become the fundamental ethic or the fundamental guiding point in your journeys of art, design, or appreciation of beauty, which is aesthetic awareness. And every family has a few good taste makers, and that auntie always picks the best handloom saris when she goes out. She's got an eye for it, and somebody else knows how to get the best car. And we always associate good taste with aesthetic sense, but that's not true. They're very different. Good taste could be the beginning of aesthetic awareness, but aesthetics are literally taught ultimately in a department of philosophy. They are not taught in design or art schools. So you learn aesthetic appreciation in a department of philosophy in a university. And it starts when you have a good upbringing and a sound education, and when you are exposed to seniors who trigger and open up your wonder sense. So every time you take your child for the first time to a new place, like an imposing railway station, and the child looks goggle-eyed at the height of the ceiling and all this around and says, that sense of bewilderment or that sense of wonder, that awe-inspiring moment is the foundation of aesthetic understanding. And if that is preserved as your strong point throughout life, then it becomes so many things. Like between us, it's become a language of communication. He's not trying to show me his jewels. He's just trying to share his aesthetic growth over last year or last season and what he has been up to. And I'm also not looking forward to seeing that, oh God, now you know how many 100-carat diamonds have gone into it or anything else. And I'm trying to get the same enjoyment out of him. So I had shared this experience with him, and I said that any given time, our friendship started so early that I could afford Viren to this auction. I don't know.
Assessment, I assure you.
But yeah, so it was a time when I said that, Viren, for me, the beginning and the end of your expression of your understanding, your aesthetic awareness is expressed through your drawing. And that's enough. The materiality, whether it translated into the diamond or the emerald and how many lakhs it became and what it did, is its own journey, And you always will have the right to say that whenever you make me some jewelry for my family, you will have the right on the last day whether you want to deliver the jewel or the drawing.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, is there anything else you want to speak, Pinakin? I think you've already... Darshan. I was good, exactly. I was just going to bring... So, I had the good fortune of meeting Darshan Patel with Pinakin when Darshan had moved to his house and became a part of his family. And I spent many wonderful moments with him. Truly one of the greatest, I think one of the icons of India, who most people don't even know of. So I'm going to request Pinakin to speak about his relationship with Darshan Patel and the extraordinary influence that he exerted on him during the years that he lived with him.
So Darshan Patel, for those of you who need a simple introduction to him, was the founder director of education of the National Institute of Design, the NID as it's called, in Ahmedabad. And again, he's a modernist. And he grew up in this country uh, from his childhood, he was a maverick. He was born different. Where he told his mother that, can you come to school and request my principal not to promote me every year into the next class. I want to stay back in the same class. And she says, why? So he says, the world that I will grow up into will be more dependent on the number of contacts you have and the number of people you know, and what you can do with that rather than the knowledge that you acquire through the classroom. So he says that if I change class every year, the same people move with me, and at the end of my schooling, I'll have the same 30 friends left. And his mother agreed, and the principal agreed, and they kept him for a few years in the same class. And ultimately, he was boasting to me that he had 300 friends. So he was born different, and you know, from that he says that he would have chosen two things as a career option. Either he was a fabulous sportsman, so he says he would have become a cricketer, or he says that he would have become an artist. And he says that the only reason I chose art is because cricket has a limited shelf life, and I would have had to retire at 40 and not be able to play test matches for the rest of my life. Whereas as an artist, he literally died painting, literally, in my arms at 86. So he chose art, and he was one of the early artists from India in the same batch as Raza, who won a scholarship to go to École Beaux-Arts in Paris, and completed his 5-year degree course there. By the time he finished his art education, a French photographer, Henri Cartier-Bresson, the genius of his era, was a resident of the same city, Paris, and he went to see the annual art show because he was married to an Indian lady, and he met Dashrath. And in Dashrath, they saw the potential of a photographer. Though this artist was actually showing his graduation show of his paintings, Cartier-Bresson saw the potential of him being a photographer and said, Dashrath, here's my camera, go out in the street and take a few pictures for me. And Dashrath says, no, I don't want to take photographs. I'm not a photographer, I'm an artist, and you've come to my show. Come on, let me show you my paintings, see my art. He says, please. And then Bresson was very clever. So Bresson said, do you want an Indian meal? So Dashrath said, yes. Yes, can you get me an Indian meal? I mean, in those days, it must have been such a rarity, right? So he says, yes, my wife is Indian, and I'll invite you for an Indian meal to my house if you take some pictures for me. And good enough that Dashrath took those pictures, and he called him home, and he mixed up the photographs of the streets of Paris with his own photography, and he told Dashrath, separate your works from mine. And Dashrath says he couldn't, because he had lost the moment. He was actually disinterested, so he was doing it mechanically. But they had turned out so good, and they were lost in that. And that's when Cartier-Bresson told him that, do you want to intern with me? And Dashrath, being the maverick that he was, instead of coming back to Ahmedabad and pleasing his parents, took up this apprenticeship for 7 years, traveled with him to all the Zen temples of Kyoto, in Japan, and covered every celebrity event that the world saw in those days, and came out as a photographer. And life kept giving him opportunities the way my life gave me opportunities. Sorry to digress, but this is an interesting connection I just discovered, that the way he was, that somebody else saw the potential in him and triggered his own impulse and said, you know what, you can be a photographer. And he says, really? And he became one. That's what has happened to me in my life also. When I first moved out of my chemical business with Amit, who's sitting here, my silent supporter, when I first moved out of that business and was looking at what to do, because I was not sort of passionate with what I had studied, just chemicals and doing that business, I opened up my garage and I took out a few things and I started making objects of art and accessories for homes. And I had a little store called etc., etc., so that I could just keep adding things, etc., etc., etc. And somebody would come to me and say that, these things have individually no merit. It's the way they are put together that they look so beautiful. So, will you come home and put the setting together? And, for the greed of selling, I would say, yeah, I'll come on a Sunday and I'll do that for you. And do you know, that made me an interior designer. And there's a beautiful lady sitting over there called Shaila Jangyani. And she had come to browse in the store. And she was looking at all these things. And she says, Pinakin, are you an interior designer? So I said, what's an interior designer? I mean, so you imagine the times, right? These were the early 80s, and nothing was articulated in India, nothing. So I said, no, she says, you've got the eye of an interior designer. If you ever get into this field, contact me. And funnily enough, through a few cousins in the family, this, that, and all, somebody had already seen this talent, given me a little chance, and the moment I got that confidence, I actually went to her and I said that I am an interior designer, and she gave me her home to do. So that took me to doing interiors for Rahul Bajaj in Pune. And for 6 months we were struggling with his plans and nothing would come out. And I said that, Rahul, the problem is that your sons have grown up, the family's grown up, but you're still stuck to this old bungalow on the campus, and nothing's going to work out of this space because the space is too tight. I said, your family has grown and you need a bigger home. So I said, get an architect. When the architect comes and builds a new house or expands this house and I have more space, I'll do up the rooms. So he says, Baitho kahan ja rahe ho? So I said, well, the architect will come, he'll take 2 years to make this home, then I'll be back to do that. He says, no, I'm not getting hold of another architect. So I said, but then who's going to make the house? So he says, you. So I said, but I'm not even an architect. And Rahul had this amazing sense of humor. If it was at your cost, sometimes it would bite, but I always took it sportingly. So he says, so I said, I'm not an architect. So he says, वैसे तो साला तू interior designer भी कहाँ है? So, and that really hit me. That's true. What am I doing? If I can do interiors, I can do architecture. And I said, really, Rahul? And he says, yes. He says, you have the understanding that it takes. I'm not working with anybody else. You make the drawings. I'll get some architect in Pune to stamp your drawing. And that's how my first building came up. That's how my first building came up. So life just kept on giving me opportunities. Somebody said, will you do an exhibition in National Gallery? Somebody said, will you do this? Will you do that? And I kept responding to things and saying, yes, yes, yes. Another gentleman sitting over here today, Dhruv Kaji, was bamboozled by his family in those days to make a home in Alibag. And my wife and I had just moved to Alibag in one of my mad things that I did, like collecting art or refusing to have children. Was the other thing was to give up life at its prime and say, come on, we are packing our bags and we are going to Alibag. So we arrived like a modern day Robinson Crusoe couple 25 years ago in Alibag, and looked at all the sort of inspiring greenery around nature. And a lot of my spiritual development and growth came in Alibag. But perhaps destiny was such that at that time, Amit's son Mohak came to work with me, and Dashot Bhai, that Viren mentioned, moved into my life as the guru suddenly. And I was saddled with 2 generations to my left and right. A young child who had abandoned his father's business and said, I want to apprentice with you. and an old father who says, I'm retired and I have nothing better to do, and you have to entertain me and look after me. So suddenly I put on my roller skates again and reinvented myself one more time to cater to these two people. And at that time, Mr. Kaji was looking to get rid of the first home that he had built over there because it was boring him, it never talked to him, nothing had happened. And I phoned him up, and on the phone I sold this to him. I said, Dhruv, I'm standing on this hill. It has taken me half an hour to climb up on this hill with 2 bamboo stakes. And there was no road, there was no access. But on the top of this hill, as I stand, I can see the whole valley of Alibag below me. I can see the ocean spreading and the city beyond. And this would be the best place in the world to make the first hilltop home in Alibag. And should I do this for you? And Dhruv, would you like to own up to And the man said yes. I said, so see, what happens is, I think when you go through life, playing through life, blissfully unaware of all the heavyweight issues that normally come with life, some of us are unfortunate enough to keep playing devil's advocate and keep posing, creating problems and self-inflicted hassles into our work and say, what if this happens, what if this happens? But simply playing life, it never ceases to give you opportunities.
Pinakin, thank you. And I'm going to lead the audience and ask you some questions. Does anybody have any questions for Pinakin? About any of the paintings in the collection or anything else? No? I think Dariba has a couple of questions.
I have a complaint which I'll come to.
Okay.
But firstly, thank you both for a very nice free-flowing conversation, which I'm sure will not only help sell art, but also help sell Alibag.
And some jewels. And some jewels as well.
And some jewels, yeah, but that wasn't mentioned enough.
But Dariba, what magic have you woven that you got this crowd sitting over here? Because I don't see so many people either in his store looking at his jewels. I don't see so many people in my store looking at my work. What is your attraction?
I can explain that quite easily. It's when each of y'all individually are half, and collectively it becomes all of them. But the complaint and observation I have is, normally when you put a question to Pinakin, you get a very matter-of-fact, one-sentence reply. Today, I don't know what it was, but one question was 10 minutes, the answer. So, anyway. Yeah, there's nothing more to ask, probably. But maybe now you all can all enjoy the art, the food, and the drink in that sequence, whilst they clear up the chairs here. Thank you so much, gentlemen. And you all for attending.